Hey, welcome to the Code Deploy Go Live podcast, episode 31. I'm Julie Turner, and I'm here with Andrew Connell and our guest, Paolo Pialorsi. And then I screwed it all up after I practiced 50 times. Anyway, we're here live streaming, if you couldn't tell, because I'm reading off this phone that you can now see. We're live streaming here on April 22nd, 2026, and today we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot Extensibility, and specifically we're going to dive in a little bit on the recently announced Work IQ and how that's different from the Microsoft Graph, and just give some overview on all of that with Paolo, who's an expert on all of this. So let's dive into it. Let's get started the way that we normally do and just check in. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing good, Julie. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're at this conference. I got in yesterday. You got in a couple of days ago.
Got in Sunday night. Yeah.
You had a workshop, right?
Had a full day workshop on Monday. Good crowd. Freezing room, like every conference room. Even the Wisconsin guy that was in the room was complaining about how cold it was. So that says you something. But yeah, did that and just running around doing our podcast live stream for the first time, and got another session later this week.
Yeah, this is technologically speaking way above our pay grade. So this is pretty amazing. I almost don't know where to look. I'm feeling a little weird. Paolo.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for coming on our podcast. We are so happy to have you here. What have you been doing? How's the week been going for you?
First of all, thanks for having me. And the week has been very, very good so far.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it will be good also, the reminder part. I came here on Monday evening. I had a tight schedule for this week, but really happy about the content that I see and what we are delivering as products and messaging. So really happy. Yeah. And I feel that people are happy as well. I see a good energy in the community. So
yeah, absolutely. And I was in your session yesterday, and you delivered a great one. And it sort of inspired some of our talk that we're going to have today. So I'm excited about it. So let's dive into the content, because this will be shorter than a normal Code Deploy Go Live podcast.
Thank God.
If you are a normal listener, this is going to be a little shorter. Thank God, right? Because we can never stop talking is the reality of the situation. So Paolo, let's start by just talking about the level setting for our audience, what Copilot Extensibility is, because Copilot's fairly new to the developer ecosystem. So what is the extensibility story all up for the Copilot experience in Microsoft 365?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, when it comes to the extensibility of Microsoft 365 Copilot, we can say that we have three main pillars. There are scenarios where you want to extend Copilot relying on the same architecture of Copilot itself, so the same foundational models offered and used by Copilot, the same orchestrator used by Copilot, and the same user experience, so the Bit Chat, for example. And when you do so, you basically create your own agents to extend Copilot, and you can build solutions which rely on custom data that you want to ground into your agents. You can provide custom tools through MCP or REST APIs or stuff like that. You can connect multiple agents, and the overall solution will be defined as a declarative agent, because at the very end, you simply declare what you want to have, what kind of behavior you want to give to your agent, but you rely on the out-of-the-box architecture of Copilot itself. Then if you need to do more, you want to have additional stuff like being able to use multimodal, using your own responsible AI rules, using external systems which are not available through the regular and standard channels like MCP, REST APIs, and stuff like that. You can think about creating a solution which will not rely on the foundational models of Copilot and on the orchestrator of Copilot, but you can create so-called custom engine agents. When you create a custom engine agent, you choose the model or the models, because you can use more than one and have a multi-model architecture. You can create your own orchestrator with whatever library you like, and then you can do all the magic you like, simply using either a low-level code approach or actually a low-code approach using also agents built with Copilot Studio, which are still defined as custom engine agents when you use the solution based on the option to choose the foundational model you want to select. But there is also a third pillar, because we realized that when you want to build something on top of Microsoft 365 Copilot, you might also want to create your AI solutions, which will be maybe an external application, an external solution, which is not necessarily based on the user experience of Microsoft 365 Copilot, but can be something else built outside of it. Could be an agent with another technology, could be an AI application that talks with the Copilot and all the intelligence behind the scene of Copilot. And that's when we have WorkIQ coming into place, because with that, you can create solutions, AI solutions, which will rely on the intelligence you have in Copilot, but from outside of Copilot itself. Right. So these are the three pillars, okay?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think, at least from my perspective, when WorkIQ was first announced, I was so confused on what that was even going to be, because you were like, well, and they kept saying, oh, it's the data layer. And you're like, we have that. That's the graph. Like, I don't understand how this is going to be different. And so, absolutely, like, understanding how these two things are going to be different, it'll be interesting. Also, another thing that you said that I think I didn't really put my brain into, because I don't play with it very much, is Copilot Studio, and how that can also have options to sort of let you eject a little bit from the path of, what a declarative agent gives you. I think I constantly always thought of Copilot Studio as just like a UX to give you a declarative agent, and wasn't really plugging into the fact that you could have a different, foundational model, or you could change things enough that it is sort of considered a custom engine agent. That's an interesting.
Yeah, that's actually true, because in Copilot Studio, you can choose the model. Mm-hmm. You can use, for example, nowadays, the OpenAI models, or you can use the Anthropic models. You can choose the orchestrator. Nowadays, we generally use the generative-based orchestrator. You can build the flow of interaction of the user using topics and using AI in the instructions you provide to the agent. You can use the builder, the prompt builder, to use different models inside an agent that you created with a specific model. So you can externalize some of the logic to the prompt builder to do something which is specific to a custom activity or role that you want to provide in your agent. So there are plenty of options. And literally, when you create a Copilot Studio agent, that's a custom engine agent from an architectural perspective, even if you use a low-code approach.
Right.
So would you consider then, when you're building it out using Copilot Studio, then you're not really extending the M365 Copilot stack, like you're really something completely custom? Or is it just that you're not using it as much as a declarative one does?
Well, as I said before, when you create a declarative agent, the key point is that you rely on foundational models and orchestrator of Microservices-style Copilot itself, and you get all of the benefits out of the box, all of the benefits of Copilot, like responsible AI, mm-hmm. like all of the stuff related to compliance, and all of the monitoring, and all the stuff you get out of the box. Mm. So you simply focus on the goal you want to achieve, mm-hmm. and you declare, whether using the JSON file or using the agent builder or even using the custom SharePoint agents, which are still declarative agent at the very end. Mm. But you declare what is your goal and what kind of knowledge you want to use to do the grounding, and what kind of tools and actions you want to have to reach the capabilities of the agent.
Got it.
When it comes to a custom engine, you customize the model, the orchestrator, and all the stuff around it. So it's a full customization of the experience.
Right. So, and then when you want to go to something like, if you want to go even further than that, if you want to go to like Microsoft Foundry and build your own complete stack where you had like control over absolutely everything, like you want to have your own like vector-based database and search, and if you want to have like the way that the agent service, use the agent framework, I guess, SDK to be able to build stuff out. You can even go even further custom than that you want. But what Copilot Studio does is it makes that easier than having to go all the way to that place and to build and to own everything.
Yeah, and it does that with a low-code or no-code approach. So it targets the power users or the power builders. Okay,
got it. Okay, is there a story for our listeners who haven't done this before? Is there a story from going from a declarative agent to like a custom engine agent? And if they wanted to go all the way to a Microsoft Foundry agent, or is it just that you really are deciding that up front and you're going down that path and kind of staying in that silo? You can't kind of jump between the different swim lanes.
You cannot jump from any option to any other option. Okay, there are some paths you can go through, but you can't go from everything to everything. Okay, but at the same time, especially nowadays that we are all investing in the agent-to-agent protocol and to the multi-agent architecture, doesn't really matter because you might have an agent which has been created with Copilot Studio, which relies on another agent created with Foundry. And you build an architecture, a multi-agent architecture, where both of these agents will work together with maybe an orchestrator agent, which will work on top of them and coordinate them while working. So you need to have, in my opinion, a slightly different perspective nowadays. So you don't need to always think about a huge monolithic agent which does everything, and eventually you change it on the go, moving from one technology to another. But actually, you plug multiple agents into a more distributed architecture, like the agents would be something like microservices in an old school architecture.
Microservices.
Okay, so almost with the same approach. You simply define your agents with their goal, with their knowledge, with their instructions, and then you reuse them if you need to do so in other agents with the agent-to-agent protocol.
I like the analogy of the microservices and giving people more of like a it's very much like a distributed or very much like single responsibility for each one of those agents to do what they need to do, and they get their own context windows, so you can get a lot more done as well, and not have to worry about doing too much like context management and such. Is there a story for also like I guess not for a story for this, but I'm curious, like when you sit down with people and trying to help them understand like which path they're supposed to go down, like what is there a decision tree that you go down with them? Is it more of a conversation? Like which path that I go down when I'm building out an agent?
Well, usually I start from the initial thinking about what kind of models, foundational models, and orchestrator you want to use. So based on the actual goal you want to achieve, and based on the knowledge you already have as a customer or as a company building an agent, you can make your choice based on what you know to basically reuse your own knowledge. But at the same time, it also depends on what kind of goal you want to achieve with your custom solutions. For example, as I said before, if you are willing to have a solution where you have a multi-model implementation, let's say, for example, today in a breakout session that I will deliver together with Vesa, we are going to show a custom engine agent, Pro Code custom engine agent, so built with .NET Framework. And in that one, we use OpenAI to do the text generation of an hypothetical insurance company, the well-known Zava, of course, the Zava and the new Contoso. Yeah. Precisely.
I'm just surprised it's not called Zava AI.
But at the same time, in the same agent, we're also going to use Mistral AI to analyze an image. So if you are this hypothetical insurance company and you want to find out if the image of a claim you get is a fake one and it's a fraud or not, you can rely on a different model which is specialized on analyzing images just for that specific scope. And then you go back to the text generation and to OpenAI to do all the other more generic stuff you need in the agent. So that's the power of, for example, creating a custom engine agent. So depending on what is your goal, you need to wisely choose what is your target solution.
Making a mental note to go add that to my calendar today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to definitely join that if I can. This sort of brings me back to what you said earlier about not really being able to jump through the swim lanes. And I think if you're just starting out on this journey, which I think many, many, many people are, because it's too new to, for anybody to have that much experience in it. I think the thing that you probably need to do as a new person trying to enter this is try out all three of these things and see where your boundaries are. Because I think the hardest thing maybe, and so you could maybe speak to this a little bit more, I think the hardest thing that people are going to have is understanding what limitations they're going to hit with each one of these things. Like if I do a declarative agent, how far can I really take that? Like until you've done one, you don't really know what the edges are where it stops sort of being able to give you the answers you need to get from it, and when you need to then shift gears and move into one of the other things. And then the other piece of that I don't want to get into a licensing conversation particularly, but there is a thought process around, and I talk about this all the time when we're talking about business process automation. Is your business process one-to-many, or is it many people doing the thing? Because if it's many, many people doing the thing, you want to think about more user licensing because you're going to get a better ROI on that. Where if you have a one or a few people doing that thing, then maybe consumption-based licensing is more what you want to think of. So the reason I bring that up is because if we're talking about Copilot Studio, you get that use of that tool with your Copilot license. And declarative agents fall in that same realm, even though you don't need a tool particularly. The tooling that you use is, you have free access to. That declarative agent is still run, and correct me if I say anything wrong here, but that declarative agent is still run in the context of the user. And so that user needs to have a Copilot license to be able to run that declarative agent. I believe that's correct.
Not completely, actually. With the declarative agents, you can have declarative agents without the need to have a Microservices-style Copilot license, to be clear. It really depends on what you do with the declarative agent.
Right. That piece of it. Sorry, I was forgetting that you could do sort of the web bit of it, but if you want to get into the business, you want to pull in business logic, for lack of a better way to say it.
Basically, whenever you want to rely on the workloads of Microsoft 365, you need to have a license to being able to access SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange Online, all the services.
It's like the web, when you're using the Copilot experience and you have that little toggle web or work. It's similar to that idea, I think.
Something like that, yeah. The idea is that if you create a declarative agent which does not rely on the workloads of Microsoft 365, you don't need a Copilot license.
Yes.
So, for example, if you are creating a declarative agent which will simply rely on business data you have available through an MCP server or through a REST APIs of your own, and you don't need to do anything with the actual content you have in Microsoft 365, you can create a declarative agent, you can deploy it on Copilot, you can use it, and you don't need a Microsoft 365 Copilot license for your users.
Right. I'm glad we're diving into that. And then to finish out that thought, you if you're going to build your own custom engine agent, now you're in custom engine agent outside of Copilot Studio. Let me be clear. If you're in Azure building, with Azure AI Foundry or whatever, now you're in consumption-based model. And so that's a very different model. So I just think, having started in understanding those bits of it and then understanding the limitations of each one of those individual pipelines before you start trying to architect your solution. I mean, there's some workloads, to your point about the Zava insurance thing that you were talking about. Well, if you need a custom agent that's going to use OpenAI or whatever, you sort of pigeonholed yourself into an answer. And so some of the things are pretty obvious which tool you'd use. But I think there's how much can we get done with a declarative agent? Is maybe that enough? Can we do what we need to do? And then when do we need to now Copilot Studio would actually be the better one because I can tweak this one thing that gets me a better outcome versus, this other thing. So I think that learning is probably really important. You need to spend some time understanding your limitations.
Yeah, definitely. And at the same time, I think we need to keep into account that, for example, declarative agents have a lot of capabilities and functionalities that you can rely on. So I don't want to give a wrong message, and if I did it, I apologize about that. But it's not mainly about limitations of the platform itself. So when you create a declarative agent, you can do a lot of stuff. There is a lot of capabilities available, and we keep on growing the list of capabilities almost every month. We release some new stuff, 100%. So it is growing so fast. But the main and key difference is that when you are in the declarative agents, you are in the architecture of Copilot itself, and you reuse all the good stuff like the responsible AI, the monitoring, the security, all of the stuff you have available whenever you rely on the whole architecture of Microsoft 365 Copilot itself. When you are in a custom engine agent, it is up to you to build all of that stuff because you want to customize it, I would say, heavily. Okay. Yep. So if you are creating a solution which is not compliant with the responsible AI rules, for example, you have to switch to a custom engine agent because you will make your own rules. And there could be reasons why you want to do so, just to give you an idea. Or when you use Foundry, again, in Foundry, you can change the settings of your models, and you can change the safeguards and the guardrails of your models. So if that is the case, you need to switch to that approach. And of course, you need to have the knowledge to do so. So you need to learn how to do so.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess where I'm coming from is, and this is maybe a way we can transition to talking about the graph versus work IQ and where that comes from. I've spent some time playing with their beta, although one is GA, but the graph endpoints for Copilot essentially. And the one thing that I think, and so I guess this is where I was mentally going with the declarative agents, is that the orchestrator that Copilot uses is a little bit general in the sense that it is opinionated about how it does its orchestration. And if you need to declare your instructions so that it is more deterministic in what you want it to do, that is a little more tricky. I think there's probably commentary we could make about how we could maybe leverage tools better and do some work there, but it's still more opinionated, right? The orchestrator has a way it wants to do things. And so I think, so with that said, I found that to be very much the case with the graph-based Copilot APIs. So maybe this is a good chance to sort of talk about WorkIQ and how that's like different and what's that new model about and how we think about that. You're totally smiling at me. So you either completely agree or completely disagree with what I'm saying.
No, I completely agree. Let me try to explain what WorkIQ is and why we came up with WorkIQ. So the overall idea is that, all of us have knowledge, content, documents, data in our platforms, and specifically in Microsoft 365, because that's what we are talking about right now. And we rely on LLMs to get answers, generative answers, based on the content we have. So we can use our data, our documents, as the grounding information for our LLMs and agents, and to get answers based on our prompts. However, when we do so, the LLM doesn't have any knowledge about ourselves as users, doesn't have any context of who we are, what we like to do, what are our preferences. So if we consider all of the content, information, and documents we have as the data, and on top of it, we add context like memory, preferences, the workflows of the company where we work, our way of working on a daily basis, all that information becomes additional knowledge and additional power in the hands of the AI, on top of which we can use skills and tools. Skills are the way we want to achieve our goals, so the procedures we want to use to achieve our goals, and the tools, the MCP tools specifically, are the actual executors of what we want to achieve as a goal. So if we put all of that together, so the data, the context, and the skills and tools, we get something that is more than just an LLM generating text or images based on some content, okay? And that's the idea of WorkIQ, giving the users the capability to get access to all of the intelligence of Microsoft 365 Copilot, together with the knowledge of the context of the user, and with all of the skills and tools needed to give actual results, valuable results to the users. When we came up with WorkIQ, the idea was to have an option to build solutions on top of Microsoft 365 Copilot custom solutions, which can be other agents, can be custom applications, or can be agents that rely on the tools, the MCP tools provided by WorkIQ itself. And we are now having a look at the architecture of WorkIQ itself. You see, at the basis, we have all of the models like OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on and so forth. We have the WorkIQ layer, which is made by the data, which can be the Microsoft 365 data, but not only the Microsoft 365 data. We could have Dynamics 365 data, we can have Dataverse, we can have a custom line of business solutions. So it's not all about Microsoft 365. There's more than that.
With on the other business data that you're talking about there, is that going to be things like if I created a Copilot connector and I was going to be ingesting additional content with a semantic index? So you're nodding your head that yes. And then what about like if I wanted to add in other business data, like to other using like an MCP server or REST API that I wanted to connect in to bring data in from my ERP system that's not like a Microsoft product, but say it's something from like Oracle or Salesforce or ServiceNow or something?
Precisely that. So the data layer for WorkIQ is not only Microsoft 365, but is more than that. As I said, Dataverse, external line of business systems, as you said, external data coming through Copilot connectors, and so on and so forth. So with all of this data, on top of it, we build the context, which is based on the memory, the semantic index, and the business understanding. So the AI understanding how you work, what you do to achieve your goals. And on top of that, the skills and tools. So all of this architecture has been defined to let you leverage in external systems, if you like AI systems, the capabilities, the powerful capabilities of Microsoft 365 Copilot as an AI engine. So, for example, you can use this technology to have an agent-to-agent interaction, and we provide WorkIQ through the agent-to-agent protocol. Or you can consume this through a REST API, and we provide a WorkIQ chat API, so that you can use from an external system the chat interface of Copilot, so that you can provide the same chat experience you have inside Copilot, also outside of Copilot from an external tool, when there is a human interaction in the scenario. Or you can have an external agent relying on WorkIQ through the MCP servers provided by WorkIQ itself. So different options for different goals.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you see WorkIQ as, I mean, as I'm hearing you describe this, I mean, this has been very helpful for me as well. Because, I mean, as somebody who's used to Microsoft Graph, you think that you saw the jokes that come out when WorkIQ first came out. It's like, isn't that just Microsoft Graph then? But I mean, the way you're describing it, no, it is more on top of that. I'm getting a bit of a vibe, and push back on this if this isn't a fair way to look at it, but that you can also think of WorkIQ as almost like a generic agent that I would create to talk to that I could use like programmatically from an external system, or I could use it as my own kind of setup. Instead of building a declarative agent that has access to the semantic index, that I can go through and add in those extensions like MCP servers, I could add in REST APIs, I could add in my additional knowledge. Can you also think of it as something like that, like a generic agent that I don't have to build and leverage this WorkIQ just directly, like you said, like with the chat experience?
Yeah, something like that. In fact, and I'm right now showing a slide that I also shared yesterday in my session about WorkIQ. I think it is important to understand and to highlight that WorkIQ is not competing with Microsoft Graph, and shouldn't be compared with Microsoft Graph, because those are different technologies. I mean, Microsoft Graph was designed and is still really a great technology to get access to data. So if your need is to access data available through Microsoft 365 workloads, or also to manage the services and systems you have in Microsoft 365 and not only Microsoft 365 through a REST API-based interface, then you go for Microsoft Graph. Through Microsoft Graph, you can have solutions that rely on the user context using a delegated access token, or you can have daemon-like applications which work on the application-only token. And overall, you rely on a REST API-based set of endpoints to access and to consume and manage data. There are throttling rules if you use in an appropriate way the REST API, so you make too many requests, you will get throttled and stuff like that. When it comes to WorkIQ, I would say that Microsoft Graph is just a subset of what you can achieve. The content that you get, the data that you get through Microsoft Graph is just a subset of what you can achieve with WorkIQ. And WorkIQ is built with intelligence in mind. So the goal of WorkIQ is to empower AI systems with high-level capabilities that rely on the Microsoft 365 Copilot, and could also rely in the back end of on the data that you have through Microsoft Graph, but can also rely on data that you have in Dataverse and in other systems. And whenever you use WorkIQ to compare the two technologies, nowadays you work in the context of the user. There is only the capability to access WorkIQ with the delegated access token of a user, because you need to have that context layer that I was talking about before, with all of the information and the preferences about the user. And of course, you also need to have a licensed user to use WorkIQ. So it's a double need for the context and for the license.
So two questions with that. So you say you need to have a licensed user to be able to do this. We're talking only the Microsoft 365 Copilot, like the all-you-can-eat $30 per user per month license? Or are we also talking about someone who is using more of the consumption, the credit packs, or the pay per use, or pay as you go? The
pay as you go is yet to come. Okay. It will come. We are working on it right now. You need I would say a regular license of Microsoft 365 Copilot for all of the users interacting with WorkIQ.
Yeah. The regular license, the Microsoft 365 Copilot, the $30 per user per month, right? Okay. Is WorkIQ as a developer? As a developer show, is WorkIQ something that I could take advantage of as someone who is building a declarative agent with the Agents Toolkit? Could I leverage that from my declarative agent without me having to go through and to build in like a way to keep the context for the current user, a way to have to go keep the memory and everything? Could I have that as something that I could leverage as like a capability, as a source? Or is that being done under the covers? Or
Well, right now, WorkIQ is available through 3 different channels. The REST one, the A2A one, agent to agent, and the MCP one.
So I could do an MCP then.
Ideally, you can rely on the MCP tools and consume WorkIQ through the MCP tools, or most likely in the future, we'll be able to rely on the A2A. Right now, in declarative agents, you can only use connected declarative agents, which are declarative agents on both sides. So you have a declarative agent connected to another declarative agent. So when maybe in the future we will be able to fully rely on the A2A protocol and consume any agent through the A2A protocol, you will be able also to rely on the WorkIQ A2A protocol to use WorkIQ in a declarative agent. This is not yet the case because, as I said, now in declarative agents you can only connect to other declarative agents.
Okay.
But on a long term, and not focusing only on declarative agents, but the idea is that WorkIQ is made available through these 3 different protocols to being able to being accessible depending on what you want to do. You have a human to AI interaction, you go for REST. You have an agent-to-agent interaction, A2A is the protocol. You have an agent willing to consume the tools of WorkIQ, you go for MCP.
Okay, so I think you said something. I'm going to make double. You said it 2 or 3 times. I'm going to just make double sure in my head on this. So, if I'm doing a declarative agent and I want it, and going back to the agent-agent communication that we can do with declarative agents today, that's GA. That's GA, or is that like a developer preview thing today?
The connected agents.
Yeah.
I think it is GA, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, okay?
It's okay. We did quote you on that, but that's okay. Well,
I was just going to say, too late, you are quoted.
Yeah, we didn't quote you, but it's been quoted.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't realize that only worked with other DAs that you created using the Agents Toolkit. So I couldn't use the A2A agent-to-agent protocol and flag an agent have its ID in my declarative agents manifest, and I point to an agent that was built with Copilot Studio. They wouldn't be able to talk. They don't talk to each other.
No, today the connected declarative agents, as far as I know, are just between declarative agents and declarative agents. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to make a mental note to go find a guy that's wearing a blue sweatshirt who was in my workshop on Monday and correct what I told him. Walking out with a lot of action items here.
But as I said, all the story of the declarative agents, and generally speaking, the agent's extensibility is an ongoing story. So we keep on improving and adding. So
that's the one thing I've learned about being working and extending Copilot, especially in 365. It's always an always changing story, and this is like an ever-changing story, an improving story on speed. It's constantly changing. It's like, what is it like right now, or at least now-ish? Right. Even you and I were doing that. We've been living in this, and it's like, I think it's GA. I'm not really sure.
Now it doesn't exist anymore.
Those are the scary ones. Those are the scary.
Time is relative.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool.
From the perspective of the REST endpoints, having played with the graph Copilot APIs, what is interesting to me with those graph APIs is that there was this sort of way to give instructions, and then there was a way to scope. You could add additional context, and you could add files, essentially, to any requests that you made with the RESTful APIs. What's generally speaking, I'm not saying let's go through the JSON payload of what, a WorkIQ REST request is, but in general, what is the features of WorkIQ from the perspective of scoping or being very specific about how you want to scope a request when you're making those? Is there ways that you can be a little bit more deterministic about the scope of how it thinks about information, or is it going to sort of determine what its scope is, and you really are only being able to sort of give it instructions and have it do something with those?
Okay, right now in WorkIQ, when it comes to the REST API, we have the WorkIQ chat API, which is the one we use to have a chat-oriented interaction with WorkIQ. And behind the scenes, there is the engine of Copilot. So the idea is that you rely on this REST API to create a chat conversation context. So you make an initial request to create your context, and then you start sending prompts to the WorkIQ endpoint. And across all of the conversation you will have with the WorkIQ endpoint, you will build your context. So let's say, for example, yesterday I made a sample in my session about making a request about who is my manager, okay? And right after, if you say, okay, when I have my next meeting with him, the WorkIQ chat API is able to give you an answer in the context of a previous prompt because it is all built in the same conversation context. Okay. Yeah. If you want to restart from scratch, you create a new conversation context and you restart from the beginning and you recreate the context of that conversation. Plus, when you make requests, you can also provide some information about what you are targeting as the grounding data or stuff like that. So you can have a more focused response if you need that. There are also other APIs which are not part of the WorkIQ chat API right now, which are actually available on the Copilot API side of the story, so in Microsoft Graph, like, for example, the retrieval API that you can use to make a retrieval of content whenever you want to do, for example, grounding, let's say, for example, in a custom engine agent. So you have a custom engine agent, you want to retrieve some grounding data from the knowledge base you have on the Microsoft 365 side. You can make a retrieval request and you can get back a JSON response with all of the information that you can use to enrich the context of your custom engine agent to provide an answer to the user. But when it comes to WorkIQ itself, the WorkIQ chat API endpoint is the one we have right now.
Okay, cool.
So the WorkIQ chat API, that's the one. I mean, we had the other chat API with Microsoft through Microsoft Graph. That's
the one I was speaking of.
That's the one that's in preview still.
It's
still in preview. Still in preview, that one.
Yep. So it sounds like that we should probably focus more on using the WorkIQ REST API than probably using the Graph one. I mean, things evolve, but just I'm not trying to ask you to say what's the release schedule or something, but it seems to me like that's like the way in the hockey analogy, where the puck is going is more in the WorkIQ side, and to kind of focus on using that for the chat experience. But if I want to go directly to the semantic index and not get all the extra context and everything, then that's the retrieval API that I can use. Is that fair, or is that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, the WorkIQ chat API is what used to be the chat API on the Copilot side, and now it is available through the WorkIQ interface, while the retrieval API, which is GA, it is not a preview one, but it is GA, it is available through Microsoft Graph, and it is targeting more the scenario where you want to simply do retrieval of content and information, but without having all the rich stuff on top of it, so the context, the skills, and tools I was talking about before, okay?
Would you put the other Copilot APIs that have been discussed at conferences and stuff about the meeting insights and stuff like that? Is that kind of also more like a WorkIQ thing these days, or is it more still?
They're more on the Microsoft Graph side.
They're more on the Graph side. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I found the chat API on the Graph that's in preview to be challenging. I couldn't scope it at all. Even if I asked it to scope it, it's like, you scoped it. You told me to do all of these things, and I'm not going to do any of those things. Have a nice day. And you're like, thanks. That was fun. So I'm really excited to try the WorkIQ one, because I think, obviously, all of this is evolving constantly. And, we're early days. Things are going to work as great as you want them to work. So I'm excited to try the WorkIQ chat API to sort of see how it's maybe evolved, and how now with tools and skills, how we're maybe able. So the scoping question was sort of like me remembering my PTSD of trying to make a user chat experience be targeted. I essentially was basically go look at this team. Yeah. I want to scope for this team and the things in the team. And I'm like, well, I don't have a way to get planner, but I can go to the Graph and get some planner stuff, and I can give it to the API and say, here's some planner information that you should look at. It would not do that at all. So, I'm hoping for the vNext to give me more ability to scope my requests and be like, yes, I know this user has access to, 150 teams, but they're asking questions about this team, and I want you to scope to this team. And any information you don't have, I'm going to give you via tool or skill or whatever it might be, and have that all be the context that it then uses to sort of work on that request. So,
yeah, and there is a nice tool that I want to highlight, which is upcoming, I would say, which is called Copilot Showroom. that we are going to make available, I would say, soon. But this is a really cool one that you can use to play and learn about how to use the WorkIQ API, the Copilot API when it comes to the retrieval one, the MCP tools provided by WorkIQ, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm sharing this on my screen right now, and very briefly, here you can simply play with the WorkIQ chat, for example, and you can have the logging of what's going on. So before I was talking about getting who my manager is and stuff like that. You can, for example, say, well, who is my manager? Now I'm in the context of my user, which is the one I have in my Microsoft Corp tenant. And now I'm using the WorkIQ Chat API to make a request. And with this tool, you can see the API log. You can see what's going on the wire. You can see that you created a conversation. You have the conversation ID. And this is a really powerful tool to inspect what's going on at the wire level. And it is almost like what it used to be the Graph Explorer in the past, again, for Microsoft Graph. But now, again, and one more time, for WorkIQ, which is more than that. So you can use it to have a better understanding of how the WorkIQ technology works at low level from a developer perspective.
Yeah, and to my earlier, like, you got to play with it and see where the edges are. This is going to give you that ability to do it without having to build up a whole thing. You're like, oh, let me see how the WorkIQ Chat API works, and what is actually going to be a payload that I'm going to be back. And it's so exactly like you said with the graph. The Microsoft Graph Explorer. That's a great tool. I still use that tool pretty much weekly. I'm like, oh, I need to go get this thing I haven't got before. What does that payload look like? And by default, and do I need to select something specific if I want that bit? And how's it formatted? And do I need to, how do I need to massage it to make it what I need? So this tool feels like that same thing where you absolutely can just do some exploring without overly having to invest and see if it's going to get you where you need to go. And it can help you choose those swim lanes as a developer. And I think that'll be an incredibly powerful thing when this comes out. So that's exciting. Yeah.
That's cool. How long do we have to wait for that?
Yeah.
I cannot say.
Oh, you can say. Nobody's listening. That's cool. Thank you for sharing.
But soon. Okay.
Soon. Okay, not just soon. Soon.
Soon.
Got it. Very cool.
So
I'll come to your session.
So we're probably running a little lower on time. I thought maybe if you wanted to, do you have final questions for Paolo that you can think of?
I guess the big thing I'd ask is what would you tell people today when they're getting started with this? Like where to go look? Not so much on like, how do I get started building agents? We talked about that a little bit, but I want to dive in more into like WorkIQ. I want to understand more of it. Where would you kind of send people to that direction of like to learn more?
Well, when it comes to WorkIQ documentation, I have to say that we are still working on delivering content for that. Right now, we are working on improving the Copilot Dev Camp, aka.ms/Copilot Dev Camp. In that one, we just created a new section about WorkIQ, and few labs will come in the upcoming weeks. We are also working on a series of videos and training materials in the IQ series that we created a couple of months ago. We started with the Fabric IQ, and now we are going to release, hopefully by the end of May, 3 new videos and 3 new labs about WorkIQ.
Oh, cool.
So that's an area where you should keep an eye on. So the IQ series, ak.ms/IQ-series, and ak.ms/Copilot Dev Camp.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely, when we put our show notes out, we'll definitely include those links for our listeners. So that'll be wonderful. Do you have more you want to share, Paolo? Any things that we didn't cover that you think is important for our listeners to know?
Honestly, I think we said a lot of stuff, hopefully interesting for the audience, but I think we gave a good coverage of the topic. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
I'm thrilled, quite frankly, because I sat through your session yesterday and I got a lot out of it. And then today I feel like I doubled down on my knowledge and I feel a lot more grounded for my future in AI development.
It's been very helpful. You answered a lot of questions for me. Yeah, really appreciate you joining us today. I mean, in the live stream from the conference, and we'll make sure this is also available on the feed to our listeners on the Code Deploy Go Live podcast. And so, had a lot of fun doing this. Thank you very much for joining us, Paolo.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Did you like this episode? Please like and share it with your friends. We are on YouTube, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. All the links are in the video description. If you have a question, head to codedeploygo.live where you can send it in. Also, sign up for our mailing list on our site at codedeploygo.live to learn about future episodes, opportunities for listeners, and get the show notes from each episode sent straight to your inbox. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.